Johnny Gosch. In the early hours of a Sunday morning in September 1982, a young paperboy left his family's cul-de-sac home in West Des Moines, Iowa, with his miniature dachshund and a red wagon full of newspapers. He was on his regular Sunday route. The walk should have taken him under an hour. By breakfast time, his red wagon would be found abandoned just 2 blocks from his house. His dog would still be inside the family home. He would never be seen again. The case that followed would change the way America thinks about missing children. It would put faces on milk cartons, and after more than 4 decades, it would still have no answer. John David Gosch was born on November 12, 1969, the youngest child of John and Noreen Gosch. At the time of his disappearance, he was a 7th grader at Indian Hills Junior High in West Des Moines, Iowa. Friends described him as well-liked, athletically inclined, and the kind of kid who once stood up to local bullies. He delivered the Des Moines Register on a Sunday morning paper route. He used his earnings to buy supplies for model rockets. How does a paperboy on a familiar Sunday morning route in a quiet Iowa neighborhood vanish in the time it takes to walk a few blocks? Before dawn on the morning of September 5, 1982, Johnny left the family's home off 42nd Street, accompanied only by the family's miniature dachshund, Gretchen. It was customary for his father to walk the route with him. On this morning, Johnny chose to go alone. He was last corroboratedly seen at the paper drop by other carriers. One paperboy named Mike reported watching Johnny speak with a stocky man in a blue 2-toned car. Another witness, a man named John Rossi, observed the same scene. By 7:45 in the morning, Des Moines Register subscribers were calling the Gosch home complaining that their papers had not been delivered. John Sr. went out to find his son. Instead, he found Johnny's red wagon, still full of undelivered newspapers, just 2 blocks from the home. The West Des Moines police, operating under a 72-hour mandatory waiting period, did not arrive for 45 minutes. They initially treated Johnny as a runaway. The FBI was not pulled in immediately. Eventually, about 30 officers were activated. Despite this, police turned up little evidence and arrested no suspects. A few months later, a woman in Tulsa, Oklahoma, reported hearing a boy yell, "My name is John David Gosch," before being dragged off by 2 men. 2 years later, a second Des Moines paperboy named Eugene Martin vanished under nearly identical circumstances. In 1991, a Nebraska prisoner named Paul Bonacci confessed to taking part in Johnny's abduction. Bonacci had been tied to the so-called Franklin Credit Union scandal in Nebraska, which centered on a Republican political operative named Lawrence King. He claimed he had used chloroform on Johnny in the back of a getaway car. He described unpublicized physical markings on Johnny's body, including a chest birthmark, a scar on the tongue, and a leg burn scar, along with Johnny's stammer, details Noreen has long said he could not have known otherwise. The FBI and West Des Moines police regarded Bonacci as not credible and never formally interviewed him. His siblings reportedly placed him at home that morning. Noreen has stated that her son appeared at her doorstep in 1997, in the company of an unidentified man. According to Noreen, Johnny told her he had escaped a trafficking organization, but feared returning. John Gosch Sr. has publicly questioned whether the visit ever occurred. In 2006, photographs reportedly left on Noreen's doorstep showed bound boys. Some of those photos were later identified as a 1979 Hillsborough County, Florida escape contest. But Noreen has continued to insist that an unidentified boy in the images is Johnny. The case remains classified as cold, but officially open with the West Des Moines Police. Johnny has never been declared dead. In June 2025, Noreen, then nearing 82 years old, addressed about 100 people at a community event in Peosta, Iowa, signing copies of her book and continuing to advocate for missing children. The Johnny Gosch Bill, an Iowa law requiring immediate police response to missing children cases, remains his lasting legislative legacy. The next case takes us to the deck of a Royal Caribbean cruise ship in 1998, where a young woman from Virginia would vanish into the early morning before her family even realized she was gone. Amy Lynn Bradley. In late March 1998, a 23-year-old college graduate from Virginia boarded a Royal Caribbean cruise ship with her parents and her brother. On a family vacation her father had won through his employer. They were headed for Curaçao. On the third night, the ship's electronic door log showed her returning to the family cabin. Her father saw her asleep on the cabin balcony at 5:30 in the morning. When he checked again at 6, she was gone. The ship was about to dock. She has not been seen since. 28 years later, sightings still come in. Amy Lynn Bradley was born May 12, 1974, in Chesterfield County, Virginia. She was a graduate of L.C. Byrd High School. She had attended Longwood University on a full basketball scholarship and earned a degree in sports psychology in December 1996. She was a trained lifeguard, a strong swimmer, and had a Tasmanian devil tattoo on her shoulder. She had a job at Ruth's Chris Steakhouse, and a new computer consulting job was waiting for her when the family returned from the trip. How does a trained lifeguard, with a job and a future and a family in the same cabin, simply vanish from a cruise ship in the time it takes her father to walk back inside and check on her again? Amy boarded the Rhapsody of the Seas with her parents Ron and Iva and her brother Brad on March 21, 1998. On the night of March 23rd, Amy and Brad spent the evening at the ship's disco with the ship's house band, a group called Blue Orchid, including a bassist named Alistair Douglas. The ship's electronic door log shows Amy returned to the family cabin at 3:40 in the morning. Around 5:30 in the morning, her father saw her asleep on a deck chair on the balcony. When he checked again at 6, she was gone. She had left behind her sandals and a polo shirt. The deck table on the balcony had been moved closer to the railing. The ship was just about to dock at Willemstad, Curaçao. The Netherlands Antilles Coast Guard searched the surrounding waters for 4 days. They found nothing. The FBI took over and interviewed Douglas. His polygraph result was inconclusive. No charges were filed. Investigators have since stated there is no evidence that Amy fell overboard, was pushed, or harmed herself. What complicated the case from the beginning were the alleged sightings, which have continued for years. In April 1998, a Curaçao cab driver said he had seen a woman matching Amy in a parking lot looking for a phone. In August 1998, a Canadian tourist named David Carmichael said he had seen a woman with Amy's exact tattoos on a Curaçao beach, flanked by 2 men, one of whom resembled Alistair Douglas. In January 1999, a U.S. Navy petty officer named Bill Hefner said he had met a distressed woman who called herself Amy Bradley at a Curaçao establishment. The building later burned down. In 2005, an anonymous source emailed the Bradley family a photograph from an adult website based in the Caribbean of a woman who strongly resembled Amy. The photo's origin was never traced. On July 16, 2025, Netflix released a 3-part documentary called Amy Bradley is Missing, directed by Ari Mark and Phil Lott. It dominated the streaming charts. In October 2025, director Ari Mark told The Hollywood Reporter that investigators were following very significant new leads, including a third grand jury witness who had reportedly heard a young woman shouting in Spanish that a young woman had been kidnapped at a bar near where Amy was last seen. Mark told Fox News that the FBI had recently questioned two people of interest with trafficking ties. He also said a separate source had corroborated rumors that Amy may have given birth after her disappearance. The FBI reiterated the case is open. A reward of $260,000 stands today. Podcaster Ethan Klein offered an additional $1 million reward for information returning Amy safely. Ron Bradley still keeps his daughter's car for her, parked at the family home, exactly as she left it. If alive, Amy turned 51 on May 12, 2025. Her family says, maybe today, maybe tomorrow. The next case takes us to a Disney cruise ship in 2011, where a young youth services worker would walk into a crew lounge at dawn, talk briefly on a ship phone, and never be seen again. Rebecca Corium. In March 2011, a 24-year-old youth services worker from Chester, England, was working aboard the Disney Wonder cruise ship as it sailed from Los Angeles toward Mexico. On the morning of March 22nd, a security camera captured her in a crew lounge at 5:45 in the morning, talking on an internal ship phone. She appeared distraught. A young man approached her. She told him she was fine. She walked off. Hours later, she failed to show up for her shift. She has never been seen again. Her family says they are still waiting for an answer. Rebecca Coram, known to friends as Bex, was a 24-year-old youth services worker from Chester, England. After studying at Liverpool Hope University and a stint with Camp America in Maine, she was hired by Disney Cruise Line in June 2010. She had trained at Disney's Florida theme parks and had been assigned to the Disney Wonder, which was based at the Port of Los Angeles. She had returned to the United Kingdom briefly in early 2011 after the death of her grandfather. That trip would be the last time her parents Mike and Ann would see her in person. How does a young woman vanish from a cruise ship the size of the Disney Wonder in well-lit international waters, with cameras running and crew everywhere, and the subject of one of the most criticized investigations in cruise line history? The Disney Wonder left Los Angeles on March 21, 2011, headed to Puerto Vallarta and Cabo San Lucas. Rebecca's last Facebook message to her parents promised she would call the next day. She never did. CCTV footage from the crew lounge captured her at 5:45 in the morning on March 22nd, talking on an internal ship phone. She appeared distraught and was dressed in men's clothing. A young man approached her, and her lips can be read on the silent footage saying the words, "Yeah, fine." She hung up the phone. She walked off, hands in her back pockets. When she failed to appear for her 9 in the morning shift, ship paging produced no response. The investigation that followed became a source of long-standing controversy. Because the Disney Wonder was registered in the Bahamas under the Flags of Convenience system, jurisdiction defaulted to the Royal Bahamas Police Force. Disney flew Superintendent Paul Roll from Nassau to the ship via private jet. He reportedly spent only 1 full day on board. He interviewed 6 of the 950 crew members and 0 of the more than 2,000 passengers. The U.S. Coast Guard and the Mexican Navy searched the surrounding waters. Nothing was found. Disney's official position was that Rebecca had been swept overboard from the crew pool on Deck 5 by a rogue wave. Rebecca's parents rejected the explanation on multiple grounds. They pointed to the pool area's high protective walls. Independent investigator John Anderson said the seas had been calm that night, and that any wave large enough to wash a person away would have damaged the ship. Several months later, Rebecca's credit card, which her parents did not have, showed activity, and her Facebook password was changed by an unknown party. Guardian journalist John Ronson sailed on the Wonder in October 2011 and found crew members eerily aligned on the same rogue wave script. The only physical evidence offered, a pair of flip-flops, was later proven not to be Rebecca's. British Member of Parliament Stephen Mosley called the investigation appalling. Lord John Prescott pushed for new laws permitting British authorities to investigate British citizens' deaths on cruise ships in international waters. Rebecca was the first person ever to disappear from Disney Cruise Line, and to date, she remains the only one. The Coriums settled a civil claim against Disney out of court in 2016 on undisclosed terms. The case received fresh international attention in 2025 in the wake of the Netflix Amy Bradley documentary. No body has ever been recovered. The case remains open under Bahamian jurisdiction. Mike and Ann Corium continue to demand answers. The next case takes us to the skies above Australia in 1978, where a young pilot would radio in a message about a strange craft following him, and then go silent. Frederick Valentish. On the evening of October 21, 1978, a young Australian pilot took off from a small airport south of Melbourne in a rented Cessna for a 1-hour flight across the Bass Strait to King Island. About 47 minutes into the flight, he radioed Melbourne Air Traffic Control to report a strange craft above his plane. He said it had 4 bright lights. He said it was orbiting him. He said it was not an aircraft. His engine began running roughly. His final transmission ended with 17 seconds of metallic scraping sounds. Then there was silence. He has not been seen since. Frederick Paul Valentish was born June 9, 1958, to Italian parents in Australia. At 20, he had logged about 150 flying hours and held a Class 4 instrument rating. He was studying part-time toward a commercial license, but had failed all 5 of his subjects twice and 3 more in the month before his disappearance. The Royal Australian Air Force had rejected his applications twice. He had received warnings for straying into Sydney's controlled airspace and for twice deliberately flying into clouds. According to his father Guido, Frederick had been an ardent UFO believer, collecting newspaper articles and reading books on the subject. His girlfriend Rhonda Rushton said he had once told her, "If a UFO landed in front of us now, I would go in it, but never without you." How does an inexperienced young pilot, in good weather, on a routine evening crossing, simply vanish in the middle of a radio call to air traffic control? At 6:19 in the evening on October 21, 1978, Valentish took off from Moorabbin Airport in a rented Cessna registered VHDSJ for a 125 nautical mile crossing of the Bass Strait to King Island. At 7:06 in the evening, 47 minutes into the flight, he radioed Melbourne Flight Service controller Steve Roby and asked, "Is there any known traffic below 5,000? He proceeded to describe a large craft with 4 bright lights about 1,000 feet above him. Then he reported it was orbiting him. Then he reported it was not an aircraft. His engine began running roughly. His final transmission ended with 17 seconds of metallic scraping sounds. Then the radio went silent. A 4-day search by sea found nothing. An oil slick was located in the area, but tests determined it had come from a marine diesel engine, not from an aircraft. The May 1982 report from Australia's Bureau of Air Safety Investigation concluded the cause was not determined, but presumed fatal. Theories have ranged across every possibility imaginable. The most famous interpretation, championed by Australian UFO researchers, is that Valentic was taken by a craft of unknown origin. The Australian Department of Transport speculated he had become disoriented and was seeing reflections of his own lights in the water while flying upside down. A 2013 Skeptical Inquirer analysis by astronomer pilot James McGaha and researcher Joe Nickell argued the 4 stationary lights Valentic saw were Venus at peak brightness, Mars, Mercury, and the star Antares in an elongated diamond formation. They argued an inexperienced pilot in a graveyard spiral would experience exactly the rough idling Valentic described from G-force-induced fuel starvation. Investigator Brian Dunning has noted the striking resemblance of his radio dialogue to a scene from Steven Spielberg's Close Encounters of the Third Kind, which had been released in Australian cinemas in March 1978. In 1983, a Cessna cowl panel was washed up on Flinders Island, about 250 miles from Cape Otway. Marine experts said unusual currents could plausibly carry debris that distance. The panel washed ashore opposite a runway where 2 other Cessnas had previously lost similar parts on takeoff. When Valentic's brother later requested forensic testing, authorities reported the part had been lost or scrapped. A February 2025 article in Flight Safety Australia revisited the case as a study in cognitive bias. The disappearance remains officially unresolved nearly 50 years later. No credible new physical evidence has surfaced. The transcript of Valentic's final radio call has been published, analyzed, and replayed countless times. The recording itself, those last 17 seconds of metallic scraping followed by silence, has become one of the most haunting pieces of audio in modern aviation. The next case takes us to a small Portuguese resort town in 2007, where a 3-year-old British girl would be left sleeping in a holiday apartment while her parents dined nearby. Madeleine McCann. On the evening of May 3rd, 2007, a young British family was on holiday at a resort in Praia da Luz, on the Algarve coast of Portugal. The parents were both physicians. They had 3 children, including a daughter who was a few weeks shy of her 4th birthday. That night, the parents dined at a restaurant about 50 meters from their apartment with friends, taking turns checking on the children. At 10 in the evening, the mother went to check. The 2 younger twins were still asleep. The bed where the older daughter had been sleeping was empty. The case that followed would become one of the most heavily covered missing children investigations in modern history. Madeleine Beth McCann was born May 12, 2003. The eldest child of British physicians Kate and Jerry McCann. The family lived in Rothley, Leicestershire. She was 3 years and 51 weeks old at the time she went missing. She was traveling with her parents and her 2-year-old twin siblings Sean and Amelie on a holiday at the Ocean Club Resort in Praia da Luz. How does a young child go missing from a family holiday apartment in a quiet Portuguese resort in the very minutes between her parents' check-ins, with no clear sign of how she left? Madeleine and the twins were sleeping in apartment 5, while Kate and Jerry dined with friends at a tapas restaurant about 50 meters away. They took turns walking back to check on the children. At approximately 10 in the evening, Kate found Madeleine missing. Within hours, the case had become a global story. The Portuguese Polícia Judiciária controversially named Kate and Jerry as official suspects in 2007, before the status was lifted in 2008. The lead investigator, Chief Inspector Gonçalo Amaral, was removed from the case in October 2007. There had been a 4-fold spike in local burglaries in the months preceding May 2007, including 2 intrusions in the McCann's own block in the 17 days before Madeleine disappeared. In 2011, the British Metropolitan Police launched a dedicated UK probe called Operation Grange. Total cost has now passed £13 million. In June 2020, German prosecutor Hans Christian Wolters publicly announced Christian Bruckner, a German national with multiple prior convictions, as the prime suspect. Bruckner had been living in a borrowed VW camper van in the Algarve in 2007. His Jaguar XJR6 was re-registered the day after Madeleine vanished. In 2017, his ex-associate Helgi Bushing told British detective Mark Draycott that Bruckner had said at a 2008 festival, "It was strange she didn't scream when she was taken." A 2016 search of his German property recovered disturbing hard drive content. Searches of an Algarve reservoir near Silves were conducted in May 2023 and again in June 2025. On October 8, 2024, the Braunschweig Regional Court acquitted Bruckner on 5 unrelated offenses, citing unreliable witnesses and media-influenced testimony. He continued serving a separate 7-year sentence for an earlier conviction involving an attack on an American woman in Praia da Luz. On September 17, 2025, he walked out of Sende prison near Hanover under terms requiring an electronic tag and surrender of his passport. By early October 2025, he was living on welfare and moving among motels and homeless shelters. The case continues to draw investigators, families of other missing children, and people claiming to be Madeleine herself. In late 2025, a Polish national named Julia Wandelt, who had spent years claiming to be Madeleine, was found guilty of harassment and sentenced to 6 months in prison. Jerry McCann testified at her trial about the strain of protecting his other 2 children from the public attention. The Home Office has approved continued Operation Grange funding for the 2026 fiscal year at roughly £86,000. Total spend now approaches £14 million. Kate and Jerry McCann issued a year-end 2025 statement on the family website findmadeleine.com saying the search is far from over and that they hope 2026 would bring the breakthrough they've long sought. ITV has announced an upcoming documentary called Madeleine McCann, The Search for a Suspect. Bruckner has never been charged in the McCann case and continues to deny any involvement. If you've made it this far and enjoy deep dives into the most shocking criminal cases, hit that subscribe button and don't forget to press the bell icon. The next case takes us to a stretch of dark Minnesota country road in May 2008, where a college student called his parents from a ditch and stayed on the line with them for 47 minutes before something changed. Brandon Swanson. In the early hours of May 14, 2008, a 19-year-old college student in southwestern Minnesota called his parents from a ditch beside a rural road. His car had gone in. He was not hurt. He believed he was near a small town called Lind. His parents got in their car and drove out to find him. For the next 47 minutes, they stayed on the phone with him while he walked through the dark, trying to spot the headlights of their vehicle. Then, mid-conversation, he shouted 2 short words, and the line went silent. He has never been found. Brandon Victor Swanson was born January 30th, 1989, and raised in Marshall, Lyon County in southwestern Minnesota. He had graduated from Marshall High School in 2007. At the time of his disappearance, he was 19 years old and finishing his 2nd semester in the wind turbine technician program at Minnesota West Community and Technical College's Canby campus. Friends and family describe him as friendly, intelligent, independent, and responsible. He was legally blind in one eye due to a childhood injury and required corrective glasses, which were later found left behind in his car. How does a young man on a phone call with his own parents, walking through farmland, he believes he knows, vanish in the time it takes to say 2 words? Brandon spent the evening of May 13, 2008, celebrating the end of classes at a friend's house in Canby. He had been drinking, but reportedly not to excess. Shortly after midnight, on his way home, his Chevrolet Lumina went into a ditch. Around 1:54 in the morning, Brandon called his parents Brian and Annette. He was uninjured. He asked them to come pick him up. He told them he believed he was near Lind, Minnesota. His parents got dressed and drove out into the night to look for him. They stayed on the phone with him for the next 47 minutes. They agreed to flash their high beams to identify each other. Eventually, Brandon stepped out of his car and began walking toward what he thought was the town of Lind. He stayed on the phone with his parents the entire time. He kept talking. He kept walking. Then, mid-conversation, he suddenly exclaimed the words, "Oh, shit!" and the line went silent. His parents could not reach him again. At 6:30 in the morning, Annette Swanson reported him missing to the Lind police. She was famously told by the officer who took the call that it was Brandon's right to be missing. A search began later that day. What investigators discovered was that Brandon had not been near Lind at all. Cell tower records placed his calls near Taunton, Minnesota, 25 miles northwest of Lind. He had no idea where he actually was. The entire 47-minute walk had been in the wrong direction, through unfamiliar country. His abandoned Lumina was found that afternoon along the Leon and Lincoln County line, 1 mile north of Highway 68 in a rural ditch. K-9 units tracked his scent along the Yellow Medicine River and toward Mud Creek. Then the trail simply vanished. In March 2010, bloodhounds picked up cadaver scent on a piece of farm equipment in the area. Investigators wanted to expand their searches, but many local landowners refused to grant permission. The leading theory among investigators is that Brandon, walking alone through the dark, fell into the Yellow Medicine River and drowned. Brian and Annette have rejected the theory that their son walked away on his own. They have lobbied tirelessly for years. Their work resulted in Brandon's Law, passed in Minnesota in 2009. The law mandates Minnesota law enforcement to immediately investigate missing adult cases without delay. Searches continued through 2011, eventually covering more than 140 square miles. The most intensive ground search took place in August 2010. The Minnesota Bureau of Criminal Apprehension assumed lead agency status in 2010. The case is still listed by the FBI's VICAP Missing Persons Program. Brian and Annette left their porch light on every night for at least 5 years. The next case takes us to 1983 Rome, where a Vatican citizen and music student would walk away from a flute lesson and become the center of one of Italy's longest unsolved mysteries. Emanuela Orlandi. On the evening of June 22, 1983, a young music student walked out of her flute and choir class in Rome. She was a Vatican citizen. Her father worked for the Pope. Her family lived inside the Vatican walls. She was last seen on a busy Roman street, on her way home after telling her sister earlier that day about a stranger who had offered her a job. Within days, anonymous men would call the Vatican, demanding the release of the man who had shot Pope John Paul II. she has never been seen again. 43 years later, the case is still being reopened. The Vatican has admitted there is a secret file. No one has ever seen what is inside it. Emanuela Orlandi was born January 14, 1968, the fourth of 5 children. Her father, Ercole Orlandi, was a clerk in the prefecture of the papal household. Her mother was Maria Pezzano. The family lived in a Vatican apartment near the Swiss Guards barracks. Emanuela was a Vatican citizen. She studied flute and choral music at the Tommaso Ludovico da Vittoria School in Rome. How does the daughter of a Vatican employee, a Vatican citizen by birth, walk out of a music class on a Rome street and become the subject of 43 years of unanswered questions inside the smallest country in the world? Around 7 in the evening on June 22, 1983, Emanuela was last seen on Corso Rinascimento, near Piazza Sant'Apollinare, after leaving her music class. Earlier that day, she had told her sister that a man offering her work selling Avon cosmetics had approached her near Piazza Navona. A friend named Laura Casagrande, one of the last people to see her that day, has since become the focus of renewed scrutiny. In 2025, she was placed under investigation for false statements after her 1983 and 2024 testimonies sharply diverged. Within days of Emanuela's disappearance, anonymous callers, including a man dubbed L'Americano because of his accent, claimed to have abducted her. They demanded the release of Mehmet Ali Aka, the Turkish gunman who had shot Pope John Paul II in 1981. Pope John Paul II made repeated public appeals for her safe return. The kidnapper's only proof of life was a photocopy of Emanuela's music school card, a document that was also available in Vatican archives. Theories proliferated. One pointed to the Banco Ambrosiano scandal, suggesting Emanuela had been taken in retaliation for the collapse of the Vatican Bank and the death of Roberto Calvi, the Italian banker known as God's banker. Another pointed to the Magliana Mafia, with mob boss Enrico De Pedis implicated. His tomb was opened in 2012. A third pointed to a Vatican cover-up, with Cardinal Silvio Audi telling reporters in 1993 that Vatican gendarmes had told him they saw Emanuela returning to the Vatican in a luxury car the evening she disappeared. Bone fragments found in 2018 during renovation of the Holy See's embassy turned out to be ancient. In July 2019, the Vatican opened the Tomb of the Angel and an adjacent tomb in the Teutonic Cemetery, after the Orlandi family received an anonymous letter saying to search where the angel looks. Neither Emanuela's remains nor the princess's, said to be buried there, were ever found. In January 2023, Vatican promoter of justice Alessandro Didi opened a new probe. In November 2023, the Italian Senate authorized a bipartisan parliamentary commission of inquiry into Emanuela's case and the parallel disappearance of Mirella Gregori. On November 27, 2024, Didi publicly confirmed the existence of a confidential Vatican dossier on the case after years of denial. In March 2025, La Repubblica published 2 newly unearthed Italian intelligence memos suggesting the Vatican may have already paid a ransom by mid-1983. In May 2025, Pope Leo XIV was elected to succeed Pope Francis. Pressure continues on the new pontiff to disclose the Vatican dossier. The next case takes us to central Pennsylvania in April 2005, where a long-serving district attorney would take a half-day off, drive his red Mini Cooper out of town, and disappear without a trace. Ray Grykar. On the afternoon of April 15, 2005, a long-serving district attorney in Center County, Pennsylvania, took a half-day off from work, climbed into his red Mini Cooper, and drove out of town. He called his girlfriend at home from his cell phone. He told her he was driving on Route 192 toward Lewisburg. That was the last time anyone in his family ever heard his voice. The next day, his Mini Cooper would be found abandoned beside the Susquehanna River. His laptop would later be pulled out of the water with the hard drive removed. The hard drive itself would surface days later, downstream, smashed beyond recovery. 21 years later, the case is still open. Ray Frank Grykar was born October 9, 1945, in Cleveland, Ohio. He was educated at the elite Gilmore Academy and the University of Dayton, then earned his law degree at Case Western Reserve University. He had worked as a Cuyahoga County prosecutor in Ohio before moving to State College, Pennsylvania, around 1980 when his then-wife Barbara took a Penn State position. He was elected Center County District Attorney in 1985 and re-elected 4 more times. He had announced in 2004 that he would retire in December 2005. He was living in Belafonte with his girlfriend Patty Fornicola at the time of his disappearance. How does a long-serving prosecutor on the verge of retirement drive out of town on a sunny afternoon and become a missing person whose own family still does not know what happened to him? There is one detail from his earlier career that has shadowed the case ever since. In 1998, after a mother reported that Penn State assistant football coach Jerry Sandusky had given her young son a bear hug. While both were naked in a shower, Grykar had declined to bring charges. Sandusky was eventually convicted of 45 counts in 2012. Whether the two events are connected has been debated for 2 decades. Investigators have publicly stated they see no connection. Many people in central Pennsylvania remain unconvinced. On April 15, 2005, Grykar took a half-day off from work, left in his red 2004 Mini Cooper, and around 11:30 in the morning called Fornicola to say he was driving toward Lewisburg. He never came home. The next day, his Mini Cooper was found in a Lewisburg dirt parking lot near antique shops along the Susquehanna River, about 60 miles from Belafonte. His county-issued cell phone was inside. His keys, his wallet, and his laptop were not. The car contained cigarette ash and reeked of tobacco. Grykar had been a non-smoker. On July 30th, 2005, fishermen recovered Grykar's county laptop in the Susquehanna with the hard drive removed. In the fall of 2005, a badly damaged hard drive was found, about 100 yards downriver. The FBI, the Secret Service, and a private data recovery firm called Kroll OnTrack failed to extract anything from it. In April 2009, Belafonte police revealed that someone using the home computer Grykar shared with Fornicola had searched the phrases, "how to wreck a hard drive," "how to fry a hard drive," and "water damage to a notebook computer" before his disappearance. Both Fornicola and Grykar's daughter Lara passed polygraphs. There is one more strange detail. In 1996, Grykar's older brother Roy had also disappeared. Roy's body was eventually pulled from the Great Miami River in Ohio, and his death was ruled a suicide. Grykar's Mini Cooper was found beside 2 bridges, similar to the location where his brother's vehicle had been found 9 years earlier. The leading theories on Grykar's disappearance run along 3 tracks. The first is suicide, favored by some investigators precisely because of the parallels with his brother. But Grykar had no documented record of depression, and his body has never been found. The second theory is that he simply walked away. He had reportedly expressed interest in a Cleveland police chief's Vanishing Act case years earlier. He left behind a pension worth more than $100,000. The third theory is foul play, possibly tied to criminals he had prosecuted. Gricar was declared legally dead on July 25, 2011. Pennsylvania State Police took over as lead agency in 2014. The case marked its 21st anniversary in April 2026. It remains open. A $5,000 reward stands for any information leading to his location. The next case takes us to Asheville, North Carolina, on a January night in 2000, where a young Walmart employee was about to look at a car for sale and would never make it home. Zeb Quinn. On the night of January 2, 2000, an 18-year-old Walmart employee in Asheville, North Carolina, agreed to meet a co-worker after his shift to look at a used car. The two stopped at a convenience store. Surveillance cameras captured them both inside. When they left, the co-worker drove off in his pickup truck and the 18-year-old followed in his light blue Mazda Protege. He was never seen alive again. Days later, his car would turn up in a strange place, with stranger details inside. The case would sit open for 17 years before any arrest was made. The truth would not come out for 22 years. Zeb Wayne Quinn was born May 12, 1981. By January 2000, he was 18 years old, working at a Walmart in Asheville, North Carolina, and saving money to buy his own car. His mother is Denise Vlahakis. His sister is Brandy Quinn. He had been last seen leaving work on Sunday, January 2, 2000. How does a young Walmart employee, last seen on camera at a sit-go with a co-worker he knows as, leave that store, follow that co-worker's truck down the road, and never make it home? And why did it take more than 2 decades to find out? At 9 in the evening, surveillance footage at a South Asheville sit-go convenience store showed Zeb and his Walmart co-worker, Robert Jason Owens, together inside. The two had agreed to meet so Zeb could look at a car for sale. Outside, Owens's Ford pickup truck pulled away, with Zeb's light blue Mazda Protege following close behind. Owens later told police that Zeb had received a page on a payphone at the sit-go, hung up, and rushed off, canceling their plans. Phone records traced the page to the home of Quinn's paternal aunt, Ina Ustich. She denied placing it. Days later, on January 6th, Zeb's Mazda Protege was found in a barbecue restaurant parking lot, adjacent to the Asheville hospital where Zeb's mother worked as a nurse. The details inside the car defied easy explanation. The headlights had been left on. A live puppy had been left inside the car. A drawing of lips and an exclamation point had been drawn in pink lipstick on the rear window. A composite of the man seen driving the car bore a resemblance to a young woman named Misty Taylor, who had been dining with Zeb's aunt, Ina Ustich, the night Zeb went missing. Ustich also reported a strange break-in at her own home that night, in which nothing was stolen but objects had been rearranged. For 17 years, no charges were filed. Owens remained the last known person to be with Zeb. Then, in March 2015, Owens was arrested for an entirely different case. He had killed a married couple, J.T. and Christy Schoenkod, and their unborn child in Leicester, North Carolina. Christy had been a contestant on a Food Network show. Owens claimed he had accidentally run them over with his truck, then had dismembered and burned the remains in a wood stove. He pleaded guilty to 3 counts of second-degree murder in a deal that avoided the death penalty. He received a sentence of 59.5 to 75 years. 2 years later, on July 10, 2017, after Owens's uncle Walter Gene Owens died. District Attorney Todd Williams convened a grand jury that indicted Jason Owens for first-degree murder in Quinn's death. After multiple delays, including the COVID-19 pandemic, on July 25, 2022, Owens pleaded guilty to accessory after the fact to first-degree murder. His version was that his late uncle Gene Owens had shot Zeb in Bent Creek over a love triangle dispute and burned the remains. Prosecutors expressed skepticism, but accepted the deal in light of weak physical evidence. No remains had ever been found despite searches at Owens Cove Road and Bent Creek. Owens received an additional sentence of approximately 15 3/4 years to be served concurrently with his existing one. District Attorney Williams said the plea, for the first time, legally established that Zeb Quinn had been killed. Zeb's remains have never been recovered. The next case takes us to Chicago in November 2006, where a college student attending a Model United Nations conference would step out of a 2 a.m. meeting for what he said was a 30-minute break. Jesse Ross. On the early morning of November 21st, 2006, a 19-year-old college student from Missouri was attending a Model United Nations conference at a downtown Chicago hotel. At 2 a.m, an emergency security council session began. About 30 minutes in, Jesse Ross stood up, told the room he was taking a 30-minute break, and walked out of the meeting. Hotel lobby cameras captured him heading toward the doors. He was supposed to be walking 10 minutes back to his own hotel. He never made it. He has never been seen again. Jesse Warren Ross was born February 18, 1987, in Belton, Missouri. He was the son of Don and Donna Ross. At 19, he was a sophomore communications major at the University of Missouri, Kansas City. He had recently been promoted from unpaid intern to a paid morning on-air personality at Kansas City radio station 95.7 FM, where he went by the on-air name Opie Cunningham. Friends and family describe him as inseparable from his mother by phone, calling her almost every day. How does a college student walking a 10-minute route in one of the most heavily surveilled and well-lit districts in downtown Chicago, with cameras on nearly every corner, simply vanish into thin air? Jesse traveled to Chicago on November 18, 2006, with 13 other UMKC students and a faculty advisor for the 4-day American Model United Nations Conference at the Sheraton Chicago Hotel and Towers. He and his roommate Ralph Parker were staying at the 4 Points Sheraton, about a half-mile northwest of the conference hotel. On the evening of November 20th, he attended the conference dance. According to fellow students, he and others had been drinking. At 2 a.m. on November 21st, an emergency security council session of the conference began at the host hotel. About 30 minutes in, Jesse stood up, said he was taking a 30-minute break, and walked out of the meeting room. Hotel lobby surveillance captured him in a white t-shirt, jeans, a green warm-up jacket, and black sneakers walking toward the doors. He was never seen again. The investigation that followed was hampered by timing. Ralph Parker returned to their shared room around 6 a.m, but did not realize Jesse was missing because the dark room and clothing piles obscured the empty bed. Police were not called until around 4 p.m. on November 21st, after the conference had ended. By then, approximately 1,200 student witnesses had begun dispersing across the country for Thanksgiving. Filmmaker Brian Rose later described the situation as an investigator's nightmare. The Chicago Police Department deployed helicopters, cadaver dogs, and divers. They searched the Chicago River. They reviewed all available footage. there was no activity on Jesse's phone. There was no activity on his credit cards. He had been mugged in Chicago on a 2005 Model UN trip and had his digital camera stolen, an incident his parents had warned him about before this trip. The 10-minute walk between the Sheraton Towers and the 4 Points runs through one of Chicago's most heavily surveilled and well-lit districts. No outdoor camera caught Jesse making the walk. Theories have ranged across every possibility. The Chicago Police Department's preferred theory was that Jesse had been drinking and had fallen into the Chicago River. Don Ross has noted publicly that this theory is convenient because, if true, it is not really a crime. Jesse had brought CDs of his music mixes to Chicago hoping to network. His parents have speculated he met the wrong person. The Ross family has also said that other students refused to talk to investigators and reportedly were told by the university not to speak with police, raising suspicions about liability protection. The case remains an active, endangered missing investigation with the Chicago Police Department's 12th District. The 2024 documentary, When I Last Saw Jesse, by filmmaker Brian Rose, premiered at the Kansas City Film Festival in April 2024. Don and Donna Ross continue to maintain findjesseross.com. Donna has said that if Jesse ever thought they would give up on him, they would catch hell from him. This was all from our side today. Thanks for watching. Click here to check out another video.